A Nandroid's Dream, Chapter 3. The car pulled out onto the quiet morning street, the only sound the purr of the engine and the soft crunch of the gravel driveway. There would be several minutes of driving through the lazy, winding, affluent neighborhoods as they made their way to the more major streets, then onto the highway for the drive to the coast. Along with everything else the day promised, she also thought on the small things that would be new to her. The longest drive they had ever taken together, the furthest from home she'd ever been, well, since after being sent from Sterling anyway. Just more tiny details adding to this growing feeling she couldn't shake. This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. Humans didn't have to give their robots days off. She was treated special. Big question of the morning then, her owner asked, pulling her from her once again trailing thoughts. Any dreams last night? Or unique dreams? Or however it works for you? She felt a small tingle from the knowledge that they still were interested in something so important to her, but it was replaced with sadness remembering the normal night she had. No, just my normal backup. She tried to sound normal. It wasn't right that she had a potential error, but it was definitely wrong that she had enjoyed it so. You disappointed? She had hoped it wasn't too obvious in her voice, but she had been excited to relive that dream, or others. As she thought of an appropriate response, her owner preempted her. Don't worry, it's the same with humans, just sometimes you don't have dreams. But I'm glad you've chilled out about it a bit. You seemed really distressed last night. Dreaming doesn't have to be a bad thing. I know. It's just not something that's supposed to happen to me, I think, she replied. While her behavior and outburst had definitely left an impression, it felt good to know that her owner didn't find her strange, or worse, defective. Well, even if it's not, once or twice isn't any call for alarm, right? Having her owner ask these simple questions helped make everything clearer to her. No, it shouldn't have been. She now felt quite silly looking back on the previous night's events. She was glad that they had led to today, but wished it could have happened in a more constructive way. I apologize. Hey, no, don't. They stopped her. It wasn't a rude interruption. It was full of calm, directed energy. She wasn't being chastised. If there's something bothering you or you're worried about something, you shouldn't have to have a reason to bring it up with me. Just let me know and we can talk it out. Again, how wonderful they were. So thoughtful to her perceived problem and letting her know she was right to bring it up. She sunk into her seat as she dared to glance at them. Their normally calm features bore a stern look, not to her and not to her fears, but to the thought that she should ever not feel free to talk with them about anything. She now couldn't look away, completely absorbed in this feeling, and her owner's tough demeanor. They truly cared for her and her well-being. This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. Robots weren't supposed to have better treatment than being an appliance. She was treated special. She had to say something, to tell them something, but it was so difficult to express this feeling. And the more she stared, the worse it got. But she couldn't and didn't want to look away. Every second was a new moment she wanted to remember with them, especially with this unique exchange and look. They'd never been so serious with her before, and in such a positive and caring way. What? Is there something else? They asked, looking over and locking eyes with her for just a moment. It made her head ring. Say something. Just say something, you ninny. But words failed her again. They looked back to her, with an even more serious look, their hard gaze looking directly into her as they spoke, causing another flurry of errors. I'm serious. I don't care what it is. If there's ever anything you want to bring up with me, just do it. I don't want anything bad to happen because you think I don't care. It was like an angel had spoken to her. As the words reached her, her cheeks erupted and she clenched her hands into tight fists to stop them from shaking. What a thing to be told. By a human, no less. It was a strange feeling, hearing her owner say such things. But she couldn't just keep staring at them like this. She had to say something, anything. All she could think of was what she had just been told. That was good enough. I don't want anything bad to happen to you either. Well, it was true, but what a thing to say. It seemed sufficient for her owner, who broke into a wide grin and looked to the road once more. A few small chuckles from them was like honey for her, and again her face stretched into the largest smile she could muster. Just knowing she could elicit such a response from them over her simple words, she sunk even further into her seat, tore her eyes from her owner, and covered her face with her hands. Just stay calm. Collect yourself. You're not defective and you have to prove it. She sat in the darkness, finding comfort in the absence of their overpowering stimulus. Just relax. She felt her cheeks dim and the errors subside. Her owner piped up again, this time with much lighter and more everyday talk, a story from the office. She listened and provided small quips or agreement as her owner relayed the story, and then they talked about more mundane news that they had heard. About the cost of this changing, about that item they had been wanting to get coming back in stock. Just the normal, everyday talk they had always had. And she loved it. She hung on every word, finally being able to truly appreciate how they were treating her after all these months. If her day off had consisted of nothing but this, it would easily have been the best day she'd ever had. But there was more. The day had barely even begun. The pier wasn't too far, but long enough for the drive to stretch on and many topics to be covered. As they reached the highway, the real journey began, and she could see the road signs marking their destination. Bikini Beach, 40 miles. She had seen advertisements for their famous theme park many times, so already knew of the fun reputation the city had. She may have heard about the carnival on the pier as well, but couldn't recall. She was still completely lost as to what to expect, but as long as she was with them, it was all worth it. More boring, wonderful, everyday talk between the two of them helped pass the time, and after the uneventful drive, they arrived at Bikini Beach. The first stop, her owner explained, was going to get something for breakfast. A late breakfast, but the first meal of the day nonetheless. They drove through the busy streets, packed with tourists and locals alike, out to enjoy the weekend. After driving a bit through the slow crawl of traffic, she saw a small pancake house down a side street. Knowing her owner's preferences, she pointed it out, and they took the next turn to swing around and make it to the hastily chosen destination. The street was made up of older buildings, a few shops, some small restaurants, with this hole in the wall being converted into a pancake house, and just enough parking as they nabbed the last spot in the small lot. They exited the car and went to enter the simple shop, its inner walls decorated with Bikini Beach memorabilia and photos of bygone years, and were greeted by a friendly, slightly older waitress bot, who led them to one of the last free booths in the corner. Her owner, already knowing exactly what they wanted, placed their short stack order with bacon to the waitress bot, who dutifully put the order to memory and left, promising a quick return. Her owner settled into their seat, and the small talk continued, broken up by the hustle and bustle of the busy restaurant. Her owner checked their watch for the time. "So what are you normally doing at this time of day?" It felt so good to have them ask things directly about her, knowing they were interested in what she was doing when they were apart. "Well, during the week I would begin prepping for dinner. I would choose a meal and make sure we have all the required ingredients. One must always double check, you can't be too careful. One time we almost ran out of paprika. Can you imagine trying to braise chicken without paprika?" She laughed to herself at the absurd thought. "Yeah, I guess not." Her owner gave a strained smile and a small, less enthused laugh. "You always start dinner before noon?" This question sounded slightly different than the previous. "Oh no, only during the weekdays. When you're home over the weekend, I do dinner planning the night before so that there aren't any interruptions to your day." They stared for a moment before dropping their eyes to the table, their smile faltering. What did she do? Did she say something wrong? Had her dinners not been up to snuff, and this revelation of the amount of effort she attempted to put in was not matching with the outcome? It was bad protocol to pry, she knew, but this quick panic she felt wouldn't let her be. She had been doing something wrong, and it showed on their face. She leaned in and spoke, just above a whisper. "Is there something wrong with the way I handle dinner?" If there was anything she could do to make herself a better maid for them, she wanted to hear it. But to be so bold in a public place and ask such a question out loud would definitely be frowned upon by Sterling. But her owner was so different to what she had been taught about humans, and the crowds of people kept moving around, the clink and clatter of plates continued, there was no hushed talk about what a bad robot she was for speaking like that. The world didn't end. Instead, her owner took a deep breath and looked up. "No, not..." They trailed off while looking at her. They seemed to think better of the offhand response they were about to give and started again. "Well, yeah. You don't need to start dinner before lunchtime, and you shouldn't have to spend hours on it either. I'm not that picky." "I don't think you're picky," she said indignantly. "To think they would feel that's how she perceived them." "Thanks, but what I was getting at is you shouldn't spend more time on me than you do yourself." She had never been trained to be treated like this. But after a full morning of it, she was getting better at handling the errors and confusion it caused her, and it helped if she just spoke without thinking, so she said the first thing that came to her mind. "But I like spending time on you." Was that the right thing to say? She liked saying these things to them, but humans typically didn't enjoy robot praise, or so she'd been taught. Her owner leaned over the table to speak in a quieter tone. "You're a maid, not my slave. What do you typically do after dinner plans are figured out?" She knew well and good that precisely at noon was the best time to clean the windows and underneath the furniture, but something told her that she shouldn't reveal this information right now. Again, she attempted another small breach of protocol and gave a less than truthful answer. "Just various things, small chores really. Not a lie, just not the full story." "But you do those things all the time too. I don't think I've ever seen you do anything but chores." This line of questioning was less about her and more about her job, and it was making her a bit nervous. "There's lots of chores that need doing," she proudly huffed. This was a strange predicament. Humans wanted robots that did as they were told and helped make their lives easier. Yet here her owner was saying things in direct contradiction to what Sterling had taught. Her owner looked off into the distance, trying to figure out how best to word their next thought. "When do you spend time on yourself?" She didn't understand the question. Spend time on herself? Well, she charged nightly, is that what they meant? What about those trips to Sterling every few months for a checkup? Certainly that would count as taking time for herself, right? Her owner pressed again. Like, when do you do something fun for yourself that doesn't involve cleaning or cooking or running the house? She was at a loss and looked away, trying to untangle this question. Those things were fun. After a moment of confused silence, she looked up at her owner, still without an answer. They leaned back in their seat, crossing their arms. "You need a hobby," they stated, nodding their head in agreement with themselves. "A hobby? Like what?" At this question, the nodding ceased, replaced by a flat expression. They became lost in thought, trying to figure out what exactly a robot would need or want to do during free time. And she, too, thought for a moment. Why would she need a hobby, and what in the world would it be? Everything she liked doing involved taking care of the house. Was anything nearly as much fun? She would love to just fold their clothes over and over, or make their bed, or straighten their shoes by the front door. "I'll think on that. Just something for you to do to have fun. Be entertained. If you do the same thing all the time, it gets boring. I wouldn't be surprised if your dream was because you're secretly tired of doing all the boring chores and wanted something new to happen," they laughed. She didn't know anything more about Nandroid brain anatomy than they did, so that could be true. She had already been slacking on a few of the smaller things so she could do more of what she enjoyed better. Maybe they were onto something. They started listing off hobbies she may want to try. Normally people enjoy stuff like reading, writing, drawing, Wait, why? Do you not have any other clothes? The sudden realization played out on their face, going from matter-of-fact explanation to quizzical to shock. They had never seen her wear something else, and after a few months it had just become the norm, nothing to question. But now it was painfully obvious, on her first day off, sitting in a restaurant, dressed as a maid. "No, I have other attire." How funny of them to think she only had her daily maid uniform in its various off-shades of blue. "You should have worn that then," they said, relieved at this new information. It was her turn to laugh now. "My party dress is hardly the kind of thing to wear outdoors, it's dry clean only." Her laughter was quickly cut short by the deadpan expression on her owner. Again, she was lost and confused about what she might have done wrong. "No, not a dress or a uniform. I mean like casual clothes. A t-shirt or something?" Of course she didn't have that kind of clothing. How unbecoming. She wore a small frown but didn't speak. Her owner's face quickly lit up and they clapped their hands together, pleased with themselves at an idea these questions had sparked. "Right. After we're done." Their idea was cut short as the waitress bot returned with her owner's order. They looked across the table around the waitress bot as she placed the food down. "I have got a surprise for you," they said, pointing directly to the Nandroid. They thanked the waitress bot, who refilled her owner's orange juice and did a small curtsy as she left to attend to other customers. Her owner would now say no more on the topic and began eating. "Nope, it's a surprise. You'll see." They made short work of the pancakes and bacon, draining the last of their orange juice before reassuring her. "Well, it was good, but I like yours better." It was a small thing, and of course would be obvious. A Nandroid could cook better than some random restaurant. But such an impact it made on her. She was over the moon, and her smile could prove it. They stood to leave, her owner throwing some money plus tip onto the table for the waitress. They exited, and she started for the car before her owner reached around and grabbed her by the shoulder. "Oh no, we're going this way first." The immense flood of errors returned as they pulled her away from the car and towards the sidewalk, keeping their hand on her shoulder to guide her. She could feel her cheeks lighting up again. She followed with no hesitation, letting them maneuver her left and right through the crowd of people. Again, this breach of protocol. This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. It was up to the robot to be attentive and follow their owner without intervention. She was treated special. Down the busy sidewalk they went, owner and robot actively making a scene. But even now, no one noticed. No one cared. The people of the crowd were too busy with their day to give witness to this exotic scene, and the robots were too well trained to have an opinion about what a human decides to do. This was so different than what Sterling had taught her. Was there really anything wrong with her being treated like this? Or wanting to be treated like this? Her owner kept their head on a swivel, looking at the storefronts left and right, across the street, even down to the next block. After a short walk through the crowd, they changed pace, walking with determination to a nearby store that had come into view. As they passed the front and entered, she saw several bright neon signs in the window: souvenirs, gift shop, clothing, half off. It was a store crammed full of all kinds of small and overpriced items for tourists to fall victim to, not least of which was an entire wall of shirts in various colors, styles, and sizes. Whether it was the cost or quality, she wasn't sure, but aside from the 2 new customers, the store was empty. Her owner finally took their hand off of her shoulder and she stepped away, needing time to collect herself and hopefully cool down. A robust gentleman popped out of a back room at the sound of customers and called out a welcome, asking if they needed help finding anything in particular. The quick dismissal from her owner sent the man back to where he came from, and her owner bobbed over to the wall of exorbitant cloth. They put their hand to their chin and considered the shirts for a few moments. Well, what are you thinking? They asked her from the corner of their mouth. She, too, now took stock of the available apparel. Most were light colors with large graphic designs, nothing that really suited her owner, but she was tired of letting them down. She slowly walked down the wall, determined to find something that would please them. As she got into the darker colors, the shirts became more reserved, much more fitting to her owner's wardrobe. She finally landed near a black shirt with a simple small block font reading Machina across the chest. While not the most eye-catching, it certainly would fit their other clothes and not make a horrible impression in public like some of the other things being sold. She picked it off the rack and brought it to her owner, who was being much less meticulous and had an armful of various shirts. Here, I think this would fit you best with your current outfits. The simple font keeps it from being too flashy but still showcasing the location you visited, she stated. Concise and well-thought-out reasoning. She was expecting a smile, but was met with a lackadaisical wide frown. It's not for me. Oh, now she felt very self-conscious. Well, how was she supposed to know that? They didn't buy gifts for anyone else before, so why now? Was it obvious these were meant as gifts and she just missed the cues? Her inner turmoil must be showing on her face, as her owner quickly added, "It's for you!" It felt like a brick had been dropped on her thoughts, her mind instantly quieted. A shirt? For her? But why? She wasn't supposed to wear unapproved clothing. This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. Her owner wasn't supposed to be spending time and money on her like this. She was treated special. She had to stop getting lost in her own thoughts, as once again her owner was the one to continue the conversation, confusing her silence for disdain. You don't want one? It was asked very delicately, she thought, with a hint of disappointment. She didn't want to say something to hurt them, but this was definitely not something that was allowed. I don't know. I'm not supposed to wear anything other than Sterling-approved clothing. At hearing this, their face and tone became serious. Oh man, Sterling approved? Relief washed over her. Now they understood. Yes, I'm only allowed to wear Sterling-authorized uniform apparel that is approved of by you. Her owner kept their serious expression and took a few steps toward her to close the gap between them. She took a few steps back to increase the gap. Well, if Sterling said it, they said, nodding as they continued to press towards her. The emptiness of her mind from a few moments ago was now back to its normal whir and buzz as her owner got closer. She bumped into the rack behind her and started sinking into the shirts. They were getting very, very close to her. Yes, it's so we don't make a poor impression with our clothing choice. They were now close enough to whisper, which they did. Yeah, makes sense. There's just one problem. They leaned away, looked to the left, looked to the right, then leaned back in. I don't see Sterling around here, do you? Who's going to stop you? This absolutely was not Sterling-approved behavior. She couldn't just wear something else. Could she? Her owner lightened up and smiled, giving her more room, but she stayed stuffed away inside the shirts. Her owner could tell this initial approach didn't make for a convincing argument, so they tried something else. Would you at least try them on? For me. She could. How easy it was to decide just now. She could wear something else. She sank even deeper into the shirts, trying to hide away. Okay, she mumbled from behind the cotton prison, putting her arm out to accept the shirts. Her owner gave her several varieties, and she beelined out from the safety of the shirts to the back corner of the store where a painted but chipped sign hung that read, "Changing Room." Room was an overstatement, as it was actually a 3-walled box with a pull curtain, but still a welcome place to hide. What was she doing? About to put on unapproved clothing? Instigated by her owner? This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. Nandroids were meant to be prim and proper at all times. She was treated special. As she sat down on the small bench in the changing room and reached up to undo her dress, she realized that she didn't have anything to wear on her lower half. But her owner, always so thoughtful, had followed her and now threw down a pair of denim jeans at the foot of the changing booth. "Forgot these, Speedy," they chuckled to themselves as she heard them walking away. She was glad the curtain was pulled, as there was no way she would have been able to hide her look of embarrassment and illuminated cheeks. She was supposed to be acting normal, and yet, time and time again, she put on such a display. She picked the pants up and set them next to the shirts. She then proceeded to take off her dress and fold it neatly on the bench and picked up the first shirt. It was bright green with a large cartoon parrot giving a thumbs, wing, up. The words Makina Beach in red snaked across the chest. How wholesome. She slid the shirt on, having to give it an extra tug to go over her head. The shirt was a loose fit, dropping down over her shoulders, with the chest and stomach area being completely free to flap around. She picked up and slid the pants on. Even though they were a smaller size, she was still able to pull them up without unbuttoning and had to hold them up herself. She looked at herself in the mirror. Good heavens. Please never let Sterling see her as she is now. The clothes were in ill fit, at odds with her normal everyday dress, overall creating a very sad look as she held her shirt up slightly to keep her pants from falling down. She couldn't show herself like this, never, not to anyone, least of all her owner, who was now back outside the changing room and could tell something was wrong, as there was no longer any shuffling around. "Come on," they drawled, "let's see it." All the day's events had now led to this. So many conventions broken, and yet no one cared. Nothing had changed, even though she had done several things that would have caused her to fail Nandroid school. She mustered all the courage she could, broke the protocol she had been taught, and gave the most direct answer she had ever given anyone in her short life. "No!" A quick round of laughter filled the store, causing her to wince. Her owner caught themselves, and the laughter died instantly. They cleared their throat. "Sorry. Please, I would like to see how you look so I can help choose something that might fit you better." She knew they just wanted to be helpful, and they were oh so gentle and kind. She gripped the clothes tighter and walked through the curtain to show herself, eyes glued permanently to the floor. "Hey!" The initial excited fake response they had prepared contained a jittering stop as the full glory of her unsightly attire was processed. She felt horrible and slid back behind the changing room curtain before it had even stopped swaying from her exit. She buried her face in both hands and the pants dropped to the floor without her assistance to stay up. How stupid. Wearing this outfit that wasn't meant for her, Sterling had warned her about this, and now this was her punishment. The curtain swayed further as her owner stepped up to it. "Hey now, come on. This is my fault. I chose some very unfitting stuff. Let me get you a new pair of pants and some smaller shirts. If I do, will you please try them on?" She couldn't find her voice. She just wanted to curl up under the changing room bench and deactivate than to ever be seen by another living thing. What had started as a wonderful day was now turning into the worst she had ever had, to be laughed at by her owner and looking like a fool to boot. "Just give me a minute. I promise I'll get you something much better." They walked away and she just stood there, holding her head, shirt drooping off of her shoulder, pants around her feet. Her emotions had been such a roller coaster. She started wondering again if maybe this was something worth visiting Sterling over. Maybe she had been overstepping the line the other times and just not noticed the effects of her bad behavior. Her owner came back at a swift pace and put a few more items at the base of the curtain. "Here, a smaller pair of pants, a belt, and some smaller shirts. I'd really like for you to try them on for me." Oh, how easy her mind was swayed. She had to try them on, for her owner. She stepped out of the current pants and picked up the newly deposited items. These new pants were definitely smaller. They nearly fit around the waist, but she still needed the belt. Now, however, they were several inches too short, with the pants ending around her shins. She sighed to herself. In for a penny. She picked up one of the new shirts. It was light blue with a picture displaying the city's theme park and various attractions adorned with the text, "Greetings from Paradise Point," beneath. It was indeed much smaller than the first shirts and may even fit correctly, if she could get the shirt over her head. She tugged and tugged, but the shirt wouldn't go on. She didn't want to damage it in the process, so she picked up another, an orange shirt whose design she didn't even look at, but it too had the same problem. The hole was designed for a small human head, not hers. Her owner spoke up. "Can I see?" She was getting very discouraged. Her small voice came from behind the curtain. "I can't get the shirts on." Her owner seemed determined to not let this outing turn out badly. "Would you mind putting one of the larger shirts on and coming out?" Without waiting for a response, they trotted off again. This was becoming very unfun very quickly for her. But her owner had asked something of her, so she put the first shirt back on. It definitely looked better, now that she didn't need to hold her pants up. She could hear muffled talking as her owner was returning, so she stepped out. Her owner approached, with the man they had seen when they entered the store in tow. Her owner pointed to the Nandroid, but the man seemed confused. She hated being seen like this, so once again, faced the floor and closed her eyes. For the robot? The man gave her owner a strange side-eye glance. Yeah, that's what I just asked, her owner retorted. The attendant looked over her for a moment before mumbling something and walking away toward the back room. Her owner could tell this plan was failing badly, so they decided to pull the plug. You can go ahead and get changed back into your dress if you'd like. She had barely waited for the sentence to end before dashing behind the curtain for the last time. She tore the human clothing off and pulled the dress on, perfectly fit to her contours. She looked herself over in the mirror, fixing her hair and placing her headdress neatly back on top of her head. She immediately felt better seeing herself in her natural state. She exited the changing room, and the man had returned with some shirts and dresses, each of which were horrible in their own ways. A dress that may have actually fit her, but was covered top to bottom in bright pink sequins. A shirt with an enormous head hole that would definitely have accommodated her cranium, and then fallen to her feet as it also encompassed her shoulders. Another shirt that her owner held up a hand to stop the onslaught, gave a less than convincing "thank you for checking," and again grabbed her shoulder to lead her out of the store. The large man gave an even less polite goodbye as they left. Whatever she was feeling earlier was much less pronounced now. It was still nice to be held by them and led around, but she was also now in a much more sour mood. They walked through the crowd back towards the car. As they were getting close to the car, her owner saw a new store now that they were facing the other direction. Nestled snug between two larger buildings, the quaint shop had a large painted sign showing a caricature of an older generation robot with a big smile and the store's name, Rips Off Brands. As her owner tugged her shoulder towards this new destination, she hesitated for just a moment. They felt the tug and moved in close to be heard over the crowd. I'm not going to make you try on anything you don't want to. Let's just take a look. She didn't want to face more embarrassment, but she knew they would never force her to do anything, so she nodded in agreement. They jogged across the street, dodging the slow-moving traffic, and made their way up to this new location. The store was packed full of all kinds of assorted knickknacks and trinkets, winter clothes to swimsuits, snow globes to beach umbrellas, books to small electronics. A little bit of everything under the sun lay scattered into roughly sorted piles and bins throughout the shop. And this store actually had a few customers in it, each absorbed in their own small space of items, searching through the cluttered aisles and kiosks for whatever items tickled their fancy. And near a large tower of stuffed bears, having an animated conversation with a thoroughly uninterested patron, the robot from the sign. Indeed, he was an older generation robot, but not completely outdated. His outward, clean-cut appearance betrayed by his sharp, rectangular features and slightly miscolored panels scattered here and there, telling his true age and condition. He wore a dark gray vest over a light blue button-up shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, and khaki pants. His stature was short, but still taller than the Nandroid, but only just. At the sight of new customers and his current target nearly completely ignoring him, the robot did a short bow followed by a slap on the back and practically began skipping over to the sight of fresh new clients. Folks, welcome to Rips Off Brands, the robot shouted as he reached a hand out to her owner, who was completely unprepared for the accostation they were about to receive. Once her owner extended their own hand, the robot grabbed it tightly and gripped her owner's shoulder with the other hand, giving both an enthusiastic shake. The robot continued at his fast, elevated volume. Now I knew the moment you walked in here I told myself, Rip, these people are here for one thing and one thing only, and by my battery I'm going to do my best to help you find exactly what you need. Now just tell me what you're looking for and we'll get you set up. He spoke at a blistering pace and never once broke eye contact with her owner, or stopped shaking their hand and shoulder. Wow, you must be Rip. The robot let go of her owner's hand but kept a firm grip on their shoulder as he reeled left and right and laughed in a very over-the-top manner. Well, no bonus points for guessing, but you aren't here to meet old Rip, but I am here to meet you. Tell me what you're looking for, and I won't rest until you leave here fully loaded. She most definitely didn't like this robot and the way he talked or treated her owner. Just looking for some clothes? See, I knew you had good taste. Rip now fully reached around her owner and began leading them to a rack of clothes a few piles down. With one hand outstretched, the robot entered into another tirade. You go to these other places around here, they don't have anything. Tourist traps. Nothing good, nothing quality, but I can tell from your look you'd only accept the best, and that's what brought you here, am I right? He didn't wait for a response. Now I've got all kinds of clothes here, but we can get you started with some shirts for the kids and a nice dress shirt for yourself, and the significant other, well, we never know what they're thinking, so we'll just have to pick out a bunch and let them decide at home. Another round of raucous laughter, and her owner had to practically shout to make themselves heard. Actually, we'll need something for her. Casual wear. At this, Rip's act seemed to drop. He took on a serious expression and looked between the owner and their Nandroid. The momentary lapse ceased, but with Rip's volume slightly reduced. Friend, there is nothing that touches my circulatory pump more than someone who treats a robot right. Now I'm going to do you right and make sure you get the best deal I can possibly make for you. Rip slammed his hand against his chest with a loud clang and drew an X across where his heart would be. He changed direction and started leading the pair towards a smaller area of clothing tucked away in the corner of the store. Casual is what you want, and casual is what I have. We've got every color you or she could possibly see, and some you can't. We can do some long sleeve for winter, a couple short sleeves for summer, a swimsuit or 3 wouldn't hurt. Let's just do a shirt and some pants, her owner interrupted, and only if she likes what you pick out. Oh, absolutely. Ma'am, please forgive my rudeness. I'm not accustomed to people as gracious as your owner. Rip had now turned his entire attention to her, who had been trailing behind this entire time. He lifted her hand gently and gave a deep bow. Well, perhaps this old robot wasn't as bad as she had first thought. That's quite all right. Thank you, Rip. He led her gracefully by the hand, and they reached the small collection of abnormally sized clothes. Certainly a far cry from every color they were promised, but the clothing here would definitely have a better chance of fitting her. Rip looked her up and down for a few seconds, taking mental notes and measurements, her and her owner both basking in the silence they could enjoy, and then Rip was back to business. Now, I'm not one to mince words, but a cute thing like yourself definitely needs something to match her gorgeous eyes, and I just know the shirt. She perked up a bit. Maybe this nice gentleman bot did know what he was talking about after all. She would only tentatively look at the clothing he produced. She wasn't going to be made a fool of again. Rip left his 2 captives and dug through the small pile of clothes, tossing shirts to and fro, seemingly continuing the never-ending trip from the top to the bottom of the pile for the next unwitting customer. Aha! Here we go. He leaned up and had a dark blue shirt that actually looked like it would fit her, except for the large pirate skull and crossbones that sat centered on the shirt. Definitely no. Rip opened his mouth, ready to provide a slew of convincing reasons that this shirt here was made for her and he'd kept it because he knew that one day a robot just her size would need something just like this. But she was ready. She was feeling more confident about going against things she'd learned. She liked the feeling of freedom it gave her to tell others her true feelings, and no one else in the world seemed to care about how she portrayed herself or Sterling up to that point. No, she said flatly and with authority. Rip didn't miss a beat. See, I agree with you. Most people will try to sell you this, but not me, not at my store. No, ma'am, this is just for measurements. He held the shirt up to her and closed one eye to get a better angled view, nodding a few times and tossed the shirt away before diving back into the pile. He held up several shirts, each of varying degrees of absurdity, but rather than ask, would toss them away and go back to his search. Her owner stood by, patiently waiting, but her nerves weren't as steeled. How much time were they going to wait for before the humiliating realization that this store also had nothing to provide her? But Rip wouldn't give up without a fight, and soon enough popped up, eyes wide and aglow, mouth agape. This. He certainly knew how to sell it well. He spoke like a different bot, full of awe, as if showing off a grandiose piece of art. This is the one for you. This pink beauty will add to your cheeks and accentuate your eyes. He turned and held up a small t-shirt, white on the top, fading to pink on the bottom, with a large, intricate rose design on the front. She did know fashion, and the shirt was cute, but the head hole was very small, impossible for her to get on. That shirt won't fit when I try it on. She held her head high and spoke confidently, even if she felt herself deflating. Rip gave her a smile and stretched the neck of the shirt to an astounding degree. This is the finest in elastic polymers made especially for robots such as yourself, my dear. Now I know, and I'm sure your owner would agree, this suits you perfectly. The colors help show off your natural beauty, and the design on the front just screams good taste. Rip held the shirt out, proudly displaying the front, waiting for her to take it. She hesitated still. It was a nice shirt, and they both were watching her with wide, expectant smiles. She was afraid how this would make her look again, but this one seemed all right, so she took it and draped it over one arm. Thank you, Rip. She could hear the uncertainty in her own voice. Please, no thank yous yet. I'm not done with your outfit, and I only want appreciation at the end if you are 100% satisfied, which I promise you will be. Now wait right here. Rip's voice became muffled as he went back head first into the pile, now searching for something for her lower half. He brought up a white skirt and turned to make another sale before her owner chimed in. Actually, I was thinking of some pants, something unique for her to wear, not just skirts and dresses. That okay with you? It was beginning to become very enjoyable for her to state her opinion on things and have it matter. Yes, some trousers would be good. With a swish, the skirt flew off into the distance and Rip was gone into the pile. This action elicited a small quick laugh from the Nandroid, who stifled it with a hand to her mouth. She could feel her owner's eyes dart to her, but averted their gaze and kept her head held high. They then moved in and reached an arm around her shoulder, bringing her in close again so they could talk in a lower volume to her. Thank you for allowing this. You deserve to have something else to wear, and I think this shirt is going to look cute on you. Oh, heavens above! She couldn't help but look at them upon hearing those words. Her uncertainty and sorrow from earlier melted away, along with her higher brain functions. It was so difficult to think quickly whenever they were doing these things to her. This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. She was treated special. She opened her mouth to say something, but all that came out was a strange gasp, to which her owner laughed. Don't worry, Rip seems to know what he's talking about, and if you don't like it, we won't get it, no matter how hard Rip tries to sweet-talk us. She didn't respond. She just stared at her owner as they rubbed her shoulder, something she knew humans did to comfort one another, but which the meaning of had always been lost on her. Until now. It felt so nice. Rip came back up and turned to the two, and her owner stepped away, or rather pulled away as she had begun to lean into them and tried to keep herself tucked into their grasp. It took a moment for her to return to focus and understand what Rip was saying. It's very tough fabric, but still soft and won't stain, which is important for shorts. He had a pair of khaki shorts, very thin and trim. It looked as if they would fit. She was very surprised, an actual outfit having been scrounged for her. She took the shorts, and Rip gently laid his hand on her upper arm, leading her to the changing rooms. Rip's touch gave her no errors or issues. How odd. She was led around a few of the meandering guests and piles of assorted goods to the back corner of the store where actual cubicles had been constructed. She took the first one and changed into her new outfit. The shirt head hole did expand over her head as she put it on and shrank back to its original size, fitting snugly around her collar. She put on the shorts, which stayed up on their own and sat happily against her waist without sagging or falling. Rip really did seem to have an eye for detail. She looked at herself in the mirror and was taken aback. It fit. It was cute. It was unique. A surreal feeling came over her, like she was looking at someone else, but she knew the chic Nandroid in the mirror was her. Wearing this made her feel different. She felt like something more than just a Nandroid. A round of laughter from outside the changing room brought her back, and she decided to spare her owner from being stuck alone with Rip for any longer than she needed to. She opened the door and stepped out. Both robot and human turned to look at the new her, and both gave an enthusiastic response. Rip's voice was definitely louder. Just look at you, cute as a button. You were engineered with grace and humility in mind, and that outfit sells you as the top bot. But she only had ears for her owner's words. Wow, look at you. That looks great. Her cheeks warmed her face, but she didn't want to hide this time. She loved this feeling and having them see her in her new outfit, and stood there basking in their praise, which continued for much longer than it normally would have, but she didn't care. Rip was the one to finally break the spell, turning to her owner and dropping his tone significantly. Now let's talk price, because these are one of a kind that you aren't going to go down the street here and find at another shop with this kind of robot selection. Believe you me, I have tried. He tapped his own clothes in time as he spoke, more clanging, giving off the impression of a one-man band. Her owner looked to her and gave her a quick point back into the changing room. Stay in that outfit, grab your dress, meet us at the counter. They turned to go with Rip, who was waving his hands around explaining all the benefits of paying top dollar for a premium product. She grabbed her neatly folded uniform, stole another glance at herself in the mirror, and hopped along to the counter, the smile never leaving her face and her cheeks never extinguishing. She felt so pretty, so different. As she came up to the counter, her owner had just finished asking a question, and Rip seemed eager to give them an answer. Hobby, huh? Let me think now. Nanny bot, homebody type, right? Rip was rubbing his chin in thought. With each pass of his finger, a small ting could be heard, the sound of a dent in an otherwise pristine panel. Her owner gave a nod, and off Rip went, grabbing items from off some nearby shelves. He returned with a small handful and began his sales pitch. How about this? Everyone loves a good crossword, doesn't take too much time, and is perfect for the little lady running a household. Rip produced a thick book of crosswords with large, simple artwork on the front, his left hand suspiciously covering a large red sticker that appeared to read, for ages 7 to blank. Her owner's look needed no additional words, and Rip tossed the book down and picked up his next item, a puzzle. Puzzles, a classic. 10,000 pieces is great for beginners, keeps you focused and on your toes for hours of enjoyment, I can promise you that, he said, shaking the box with a loud rattle. Her mood had significantly lightened, and she was finally beginning to enjoy this silly robot's antics. No, something she can get good at, something that would take practice. Her owner was pulling out their wallet to pay. Rip knew he only had one more shot. He slid a book titled The Architecture of Beacon City away and grabbed another book from the bottom of his finds. Origami, coming back into style, and it challenges both the mind and the hands. Gotta be smart and dexterous, otherwise you just make a lump. The book promised thousands of designs ranging from beginner to advanced, just add paper. Small paper shapes covered the front of the book that looked nothing like their named animal counterparts written in text beneath. Whether by luck or lack of time, her owner agreed, and the book was added to the register before the total rang up. Whoa, how much was that book? Her owner exploded, causing Rip to freeze. Well, now this isn't just any ordinary book, just look at the cover, it's got over 100. Hell no, her owner spat. Rip suddenly got serious. Half off. No, how about $2? Deal, Rip shouted, striking the previous entry from the register and adding the new $2 entry. Her owner barely had time to think about if they had just gotten fleeced over a paper book, and just handed over the total, receiving some change back. Rip gave a nod and a wink as he slid a business card over the top of the book, giving it a tap. Rip's off brands and the store's phone number were printed on the front, with smaller text beneath revealing Rip's full title. Rip Cordelio. Cordelio has the best dealios. How odd. Now, as soon as she wants some new clothes, you remember to come back to Rip's Off Brands. I guarantee I'll have more of what she needs, and if I don't, I can find it for her. You two are my new favorite customers, so come back soon." Rip called after them as her owner took the change and book and led the way out of the store. They stopped just after exiting, and her owner looked up at the sign one more time, fully admiring the shop name before giving a heavy sigh and looking to the Nandroid. "Happy with your outfit?" Her smile returned, and she didn't even have to worry about what to say as an exuberant cry burst forth. "Yes!" Her owner reached up and plucked the forgotten headdress from her head, stuffing it into the folded dress she held. "I don't think you need to wear that anymore today. I'm happy that you're happy. So now how about that pier?" She gave a full nod and again felt the excitement return to her about what the day held. Without any prompting, she leaned into her owner, waiting to be led across back through the crowd, clutching her dress tightly to her chest. And again they reached around, holding her close, and led her across the street and back to the car. Putting herself in these positions was beginning to feel therapeutic to her. The more it happened, the fewer errors occurred, the easier it was to think, the easier it was to enjoy the moment. They reached the car together, and their owner walked over and opened the door for her, letting her get in first. This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. She was supposed to open doors for them, not the other way around. She was treated special. She mumbled a muffled thank you from behind her folded dress and got into the car. After they closed her door, she gently placed her uniform and new book into the back seat, perfectly framed in the center. Her owner climbed in and started their adventure once again. The lunch rush had died down, but it still took several minutes of waiting before the road and sidewalk were clear enough for them to exit. Her owner pulled out on the narrow street and began heading to the pier, the main road still proving to be just as busy. Meandering through the street, she took in the sights of the city. Shops of every kind dotted the buildings along the road, and people from all over were all over. Traffic was slow and jammed in many places, leading them on new side streets and new shops popping into view. A large hotel sat in the distance, a theme park near it, playing tag in her vision as it came in and out of view from around buildings and trees. She saw robots of all kinds, too, just going about their day, and some were most certainly not in any kind of company-approved attire. But time and time again she saw that no one was bothered, no one seemed to care. She thought back to her own instances of insubordination today, wearing her new outfit, having her owner hold her close and lead her through the crowd, speaking aloud and asking their opinion of her job in a public place, having her owner hold her close. "Penny for your thoughts?" Their question snapped her out of her daze. No amount of pennies would get her to divulge what she had just been thinking. "Just thinking about my new clothes." These harmless fibs were increasing in number, which did worry her a bit. But she wasn't being malicious, just being careful with the information she gave. She recalled her Nandroid school training. That was the only time it was okay to lie. She looked down at her body. Such a strange sight. Her dress had been form-fitting, but to be in such clothing made her feel smaller than usual. She ran her hands across the shirt, tracing the design with her finger. It truly was lovely and fit so well, like it was made specifically for her. "I'm glad you enjoy them. You don't have to switch back to your maid uniform if you don't want to. You can wear this whenever you want." So gracious, so accommodating. They were the most wonderful person she had ever had the pleasure to meet. Which wasn't saying much, but was still true. "Thank you, but I'd like to keep it safe for special occasions. I'd hate to get it dirty when I'm cleaning something." She would like nothing more than to wear this outfit forever, but it would freeze her processor if she accidentally ruined it in some way. Her owner didn't seem pleased with that response. "We can get you some new clothes to wear, and you shouldn't have to wear the same uniform all the time." She took a moment to process this. More clothes would mean more trips with her owner to purchase them. She couldn't refuse even if she was happy with just one unique outfit. She hoped she didn't sound too greedy when she acknowledged and accepted the request. But if she did, her owner didn't seem to mind. Getting through the traffic, they finally arrived to the pier, as did several hundred others. The parking lot was full, so her owner had to flip through the lanes and continue along looking for beachside parking, which was also completely filled. As the car slowly strolled past the filled spaces, they got further and further from their destination, but still no clear space presented itself. With the pier receding into the background, her owner pulled back onto the main street and started looking for somewhere close with more ample parking. Store parking, street-side parking, metered parking, all full along every street. An oversight on her owner's part for choosing the tourist destination on a weekend for a fun getaway. Her owner gave a heavy sigh. "Well, looks like we'll have to come back to the pier in a bit. See anything else that strikes your fancy?" Being put on the spot again like this sent her back to her stupor. She didn't know where to go. She didn't know what was fun. She looked out the window at the passing shops and signs, but nothing grabbed her attention. More shops, more street vendors, bars, nothing that seemed enjoyable to her. As they traveled a few blocks further, a large park appeared, nestled in between all the buildings. A large sign at the entrance declaring it to be Makina Beach Community Park, and a large map decorated with many different colored locations. "This'll be better than any park we have back home," her owner explained as they pulled in through the ornate gate. Unlike the beach, parking was ready for the taking here. They found a spot near one of the large standing kiosks, and together they got out of the car and went to investigate. "Welcome to Makina Beach Community Park," the sign proudly exclaimed. A large map sat in the middle, a tiny red star marking their position near the entrance, and many numbered dots scattered all across the face. Her owner and she took stock and began looking through all the various points of interest. Tennis, golf, a dog park, paddle boat rentals near the small lake, an outdoor amphitheater with a faded sheet of paper listing this month's performances. It all seemed nice, but nothing that jumped out at her. Neither had ever played tennis or golf. She'd never had any experience with animals. Her feet would most definitely be a hindrance to her trying to use a paddle boat, and the paper with the amphitheater information was much too battered to read. As her eyes scanned the shortening list, she started to become anxious again. All these things that her owner may be able to do on their own, but it being her day off meant they couldn't. She felt a tinge of guilt begin to creep up. Here they were, a park for humans, trying to find something to entertain a Nandroid. As she tried to think of something to say, her owner's attention was caught by one of the final entries on the map. "An arboretum, that'll be fun. Just over this way here," they said as they surveyed the map and matched it to the physical location that surrounded them. They turned to her for confirmation. "You want to?" Anything would be better than standing in front of this sign, so she agreed. As her owner stepped towards her to walk around the sign and begin their short trek, without thought she moved towards them again, ready to be held and led down the path. But her owner didn't reach for her and instead walked right past. Oh, they weren't going to lead her now. Oh, of course. How silly of her. Why would they do that here, without all the crowds and bustle? What a thing to expect. Her cheeks lit up at the embarrassment she felt for thinking that they would do such a thing again. And also from the disappointment she felt somewhere deep inside that told her she wished they'd do it again. She followed up quickly to her owner and matched their pace, them being none the wiser to her inner feelings. As long as no one knew, there wasn't anything to be embarrassed about, she repeated over and over to calm herself. It worked after a moment, and she felt her face return to normal, just in time as her owner turned towards her to break up the silence. "So have you ever been to an arboretum before? Like on a field trip when you were at school?" She couldn't help but smile, more questions about herself. "Oh no, we didn't do those kinds of things. I have read about the proper care for plants, though, and passed the testing we had to take, showing we could provide the correct amount of water to different plants based upon their size, container, and media. It was a plastic plant, but the lesson holds for real ones as well." There was a few seconds of silence. She wondered if she had overstepped in some way by offering the clarification between real and fake plants. Of course they'd know that. "Is this your first day off? Or a trip anywhere? Ever?" It was asked slowly, with a deliberate word choice. She was confused. Was she getting in trouble for being a good Nandroid? She was unsure of how to answer to de-escalate the situation. "Yes?" Her owner came to a halt. She stopped but didn't face them, instead lifting her shoulders to cower. She was so very confused about what she was doing wrong. "And during the day, all you do is chores and get ready for dinner?" She didn't answer or move. They were asking this strange line of questioning again, only this time there wasn't anything to break their attention from her and her response. She stood still, head down, counting the seconds. What were they expecting of her? What did they want her to say? She felt their hand wrap around her shoulder again, and her worries and anxiety left her body. She snapped to her owner. They were giving her a sad, pleading expression. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you don't take breaks. I thought that when I was at work, you took free time and did dinner and chores when I came home. It's not right that you don't get to have time for yourself." This was not what she was expecting. She couldn't believe her audio receptors. Why would they apologize for that? "I was made to do this," she fumbled through the oft-repeated mantra from Sterling educators. This line of reasoning did nothing to dissuade her owner's look. "Sure, but you can be both a good maid and still be able to have free time, right?" What a simple question, and yet she had never thought about it before. So many emotions and ideas were clashing in her already confounded head, and still they held her tight, offering comfort to her metal being, such a look of concern painted across their face. She tried to give an answer, and whatever sound escaped her mouth seemed to be good enough for them, as they kept her close and continued walking down the path, hand placed gently on her back. "Listen, after today, I don't want you working 24/7 on the house or me. I want you to take breaks, do something else, and we are going to go do something fun next weekend as well, okay? Her mind was still clouded by all these conflicting feelings and wonderful new information she just received. She couldn't tell if she gave a coherent response or not. Never once had she been told not to perform some kind of work. She wasn't sure exactly what she would be doing then, but there was no way she'd deny her owner such a request. This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. She was supposed to dote on her owner and cater to their whims and make their life easier at the expense of everything else. She was treated special. She continued in vain to process all this new information and began wondering how best she could fill her new role as a maid not maid. There was always something needing to be cleaned, or something needing vacuumed, or something else to be done, even if it had just been done the day prior. But maybe it was a bit silly. She had already been shuffling jobs and postponing some, but her owner hadn't cared or even noticed. She had just needed this extra little nudge, someone to point her in another direction, and of course it was going to have been them. They walked in silence while she pondered this strange new idea of not working as they rounded a small bend in the path, bringing the arboretum into view. It was a large dome greenhouse with a plethora of flowers planted along the outside edge, giving it a colorful and varied flower bed running the entire perimeter, except for a revolving door on one side. She could barely see inside, so many leaves of all kinds crowded the walls to greedily drink in the sunlight. They arrived at the entrance and strode in together, still a pair. She wondered if the heat of the greenhouse mixed with her own overheating would be a cause for concern, but there was no way she would break from her owner's grip at this point, so she relished what might be the last few moments she had in their arms, and together they entered and went through the rotating door. A million colors bombarded her sensors from every angle. Violet flowers dotting the vines that crawled across the ground, huge blue flowers that hung like bells from high in the trees, red flowers that grew like a funnel and ended with an explosion of yellow. All around, they hung and encroached upon the once clear path for them to take, which led right past a small booth with a very simple robot sitting within. The simple rusting machine saw the approaching couple and spoke to her owner. 1 adult? 2, please, her owner corrected. The robot lagged for a moment, staring at her owner, and looked to the Nandroid before turning to the owner again. 1 adult, $5. No, 2. Sure. They relented as they threw down a 5, realizing the futility of trying to explain to this simple machine that the Nandroid was also a guest. The reception bot thanked them and began his speech of no flash photography and to dispense all trash in the designated. Her owner nodded their head, and the two skipped the rest of the lesson to begin walking down the path. She had to blink away the condensation that was starting to form on her eyes from the humid environment. Geez, hard to believe that you two are related, huh? Her owner laughed at their own joke, as did she, though she didn't think it was especially funny, but she couldn't help it once they gave her that smile. As they began their walk, she was accosted by the exuberance that grew around them. She had seen beautiful bouquets before, but the sheer amount and complexity of the colors that surrounded her now was something beyond what she had expected. The path meandered all over, giving the deceivingly small building a seemingly impossible walk, with every inch covered in unique flowers, plants, cacti, every form of grown life, shoved into this tiny glass bowl, and above their heads, little birds flew back and forth, fighting, twittering, making homes in the canopy, while below, small mice skittered around, finding the two giants trespassing in their domain completely uninteresting. This was so unique. Her owner seemed to be enjoying it too, stopping here and there to admire things, but not nearly as much as she was. Each new flower was a wonderful cacophony of shape and color, unique to anything she had ever seen before. She made it a point to keep up, but still found herself lagging behind as she tried to take in every sight. A large purple bush would give way to prickly pink leaves, to soft fuzzy white petals, on and on as every combination was created and explored as this study of life unfolded foot by foot. It was such at odds with her daily routine she couldn't help but be amazed. And as the walk continued, the path imperceptibly turned a full 360 degrees and led them back to the entrance. Her owner whistled and gave their praise for money well spent as they made for the exit. But she couldn't leave now. She knew she wasn't supposed to make personal demands. A good Nandroid never would, especially not about something mundane like this. But they had already said she should ask if anything was bothering her, and it was her day off. What a strange thing to say. Wait! Her voice echoed around the small chamber, louder than she had anticipated, and she shrunk away from the volume. Her owner gave a small jump and looked back. She had to get a handle on herself. She puffed up and tried to think of the best way to let them know she wanted to stay longer, but a soft smile let her know they already understood. They held their hand out to the entrance path and did a small bow. Sorry, let's go through again. After you. She wasted no time in heading down the path, but stopped after a few steps to begin taking things in deeper than the first go-around. What originally lasted 20 minutes was now a trial of patience for her owner, who passed with flying colors, as they watched and waited for her to take the sights in to her electronic heart's content. She sat for several minutes at each plant and observed. These were like nothing she had ever seen, and it was a real treat just to bask in the unique shades and shapes each one provided. As she sat by one particularly red specimen, 2 fighting mice raced past, with one trying to get away by jumping up onto her new shorts. The one chasing the other saw this and made a beeline for the edge of the path to the safety of the dense underbrush. She wasn't afraid of mice, but she had always been taught that they were creatures which were to be disposed of promptly and secretly, so it was strange to have one resting on her pants, panting and quivering. Her owner leaned in to get a better look. "Aw, poor little guy. He's pretty cute." She didn't quite understand how or why it was cute, but she knew she didn't want him to be harmed. She reached down to grasp the shaking thing, but it jumped away as her hand came close and accompanied its companion into the weeds. Her owner laughed. "Never seen that before. I wonder if it felt safer because it could tell you were a robot?" A good guess, she thought. She wouldn't smell like a human, and she was sure the mice ran all over the reception bot at night when it was powered down. "I don't know. I've never interacted much with animals," she said, getting to her feet and walking a few steps to the next flower. Her owner followed slowly in her wake. "It seems like you've missed out on a lot." She didn't respond. So many of her owner's questions were over her head. She only knew what she knew, which is what she had been taught at Sterling. But this day had been so strange and wonderful, challenging so many of her preconceptions and showing her so many holes in what she had thought she knew. Maybe she did miss out on a lot, but she had always thought that she didn't need it. All she needed was to do as her owner instructed, to the best of her ability and beyond. But now she couldn't imagine having gone another day not knowing that this kind of place could exist with all these beautiful flowers. Her owner came in close and nudged her. "I want you to be able to enjoy every day like this, so you gotta branch out and find new stuff you like, instead of cleaning a house that doesn't need it, alright?" She was having different thoughts now. Things were less confusing. It was fun to see and be in this kind of place, and she wasn't wrong for liking it. What other wonders did the world hold for her? She smiled to her owner and gave a solid nod, promising to them and herself that she was going to try new things from here on out. Her owner returned the smile and stepped back, letting her finish the self-guided tour. While slow, they did eventually make it around the entirety of the Arboretum a second time, only being briefly interrupted by another pair of people, who had taken no interest in the fact that a uniquely clothed Nandroid was poking a cactus. More and more it seemed that she was the only one who cared about the social norms she had broken. By the time they made it to the exit, the sun was beginning to set. They traveled back along the path to the car, and again, her owner held her door open. She was ready for it this time, and she was able to watch and admire in full glory their gracious action. She took her time getting in, enjoying the feeling this gave her. They really did care for her, in such a unique way. They both got into the car, and her owner checked the time. "We should be able to make it to the pier before sunset. You ever been, Never mind, I think I know the answer. Gonna have something really cool to show you." Every time they had told her this, she wasn't disappointed, and upon hearing it again, she could feel excitement erupt inside her like a flame. It was one thing to do something so unique and interesting, but quite another to be doing it with this wonderful person who had facilitated everything for her. They exited the park and began their drive back to the pier. Most of the families out for the day in Makina Beach had left by now, leading to less traffic and fewer people on the sidewalks. They reached the pier in half the time it took to leave it, and parking abounded now. Her owner took a spot just off of the pier, and they both exited. The sun had nearly set now, setting the clear sky ablaze with crimson colors. Her owner pointed directly in front of where they had parked, a small path leading through the grass, away from the pier entrance. They walked to the path and down a rickety set of wooden stairs, which ended up on the beach. Her owner stepped out onto the sand and she dutifully followed, but stumbled her first few steps as her feet sunk in deep. Her owner saw this and came trotting back. "Oh, I didn't even think about that, sorry. Here, let me help." Without even asking, they reached out and wrapped an arm around her waist, and using their other free hand, grabbed her hand and draped it over their shoulders. All the errors she had experienced up to this point were nothing compared to the onslaught that began now. She couldn't believe how bold they were. They helped lift her and started walking to the water's edge, and now she stumbled even worse than before. Her legs weren't behaving properly anymore, and she could barely process what was happening. All she knew was that this was not how a human treated a robot. A human would normally never provide such assistance. She was treated special. Her owner laughed at her rough display. "Never got trained for sand, huh?" They laughed again, but continued to tug and carry her along. She suddenly became aware of just how tightly she was gripping their hand with hers, and she knew she should let go, instead opting to put her hand on their shoulder for balance, but she couldn't. Her hand wasn't responding, it was just squeezing and shaking. Her cheeks ran the risk of igniting the air around them, and she was so nervous that they would notice the heat she was emitting. Just act normally, she recited to herself, all the while screaming internally. It wasn't a long trudge through the sand before they neared the water's edge. Her owner let her down gently and attempted to take a step away. She was amazed she could stand under her own free will, but still her hand gripping theirs. How embarrassing. What was wrong with her? She leaned away from them and stood, slightly sunk in the wet sand, watching the small waves crash just a few feet away, trying to release their hand. But they didn't seem to care, and instead placed their other hand on top, sandwiching hers in between, and gave her another endearing smile. How was this possible that someone so wonderful could exist and be the person she was tasked with caring for? After a moment of the two staring at each other, painted orange from the last bits of sunlight, her owner nodded to the ocean and broke the enchantment. When they looked away, she was able to as well. The sun was setting fully now, giving the sea a glimmer. She could feel this memory being etched into her very being. This was something she would never forget. Alone with them, she watched the sun fade below the horizon, accompanied by the methodical washing of the waves and the sounds from the pier above, and the feel of their hands holding hers. This wasn't how a human was supposed to treat a robot. Robots weren't shown wonderful things like this and given this kind of attention. She was treated special. The sun now fully set. The lights above on the pier kicked on, sending a neon flash of color into the sky. Her owner gave her another smile and reached around her again to help as they guided her back to the wooden stairs and up to the pier. This time she latched onto them with her other hand and didn't let go, opting to let her feet get drugged through the sand. Hugs weren't supposed to last over 10 seconds, but this wasn't a hug. They were assisting her through the sand. She could hold on to them as long and as tightly as she wanted. And she did. They reached the stairs, but still she clung, unable to let go. Everything okay? They had never spoken to her without total sincerity, and now was no different. She could tell they were worried about this sporadic behavior. She just wanted to let them know how much this all meant to her. Thank you. Her voice quivered as she spoke. There wasn't anything else she could say to express how she felt. Her owner did the unthinkable. They fully embraced her back. She could hear their muffled voice whisper, "You're a good robot. You deserve this." Something changed in this moment. She would never be the same Nandroid again after being told this directly by such a person. Maybe she was treated different for so long because she was different. She was special. They released her and pried away from her grip, but took her hand back into theirs. She could feel her face split into the biggest smile she had ever given. She wondered if there was a risk of the rubber coating tearing on her face. Come on, time for the real fun. They pulled her along and her legs regained their movement ability as both jogged up to the pier. Just like the Arboretum, the sights and now sounds of this place, mixed with her recent awakening, was overwhelming. People were packed close together going to and fro, buzzes and dingings from all kinds of games and machines mixed with the loud music each produced, and everywhere people were laughing and enjoying themselves. Know what you want to do first? They asked over the crowd. She was done being indecisive and confused. She deserved this after all. She could do whatever she wanted. Yes, she shouted back, bringing a look of surprise to her owner, but which gave way to another bright smile. It was her turn to lead. She set off through the crowd, holding her owner's hand, leading them now, instead of the reverse. As they dodged through the crowd, a game to their right began to buzz and whistle as someone broke a high score. Skee-ball, yes, that's what she wanted to try. They walked up to one of the free machines and her owner began feeding a few quarters into it. So you just gotta pick up one of the balls and roll it up into one of the holes. The numbers painted on them is how many points you get, they explained as they inserted the last quarter. The machine came to life with an electronic song and a row of balls slid out from the side of the machine. Her owner picked one up and rolled it down the lane, missing all the holes and having it roll down to the bottom of the track and disappear. The number 10 appeared on the point screen. Well, you get it, they said, tossing their hands up. She reached down and picked a ball up. Unsure of exactly how to aim, she rolled the ball down the aisle, and it too missed all the holes and rolled to the bottom of the track. Another 10 points were added to her score. She reached for another and tried again, down the lane, over the bump, and back to the base of the track, nowhere near any of the openings. What a strange game. She tried another, and another, and another, her score incrementing by 10 points each time. She wasn't sure how this was meant to be fun, but her owner's enjoyment was contagious and began to rub off on her. Each time the ball rolled down the track, they would tense up and stare in anticipation, only to give a quick remark of, "Oh," or "close," when the ball ultimately failed to find its intended target. She picked up another, ready to add 10 more points to her score, but this one's aim was true, rolling right down the center, flying off the ramp and sinking directly into one of the holes, scoring her 30 points instead. Just for a moment she felt something. A jolt, a kick, excitement. Her owner let out a startling roar and shook their fists in a mighty display. She laughed at their monumental outburst, not caring to hide her true feelings this time. Her owner egged her on to continue, and she was ready now. She rolled another down the lane, but it reached the same outcome as its earliest predecessors, scoring a measly 10 points. Well, now that just won't do. She grabbed another and tried to aim how she did before. This one was close too, but just another 10-point ball. She looked down and only had one chance left. She grabbed the ball and moved in as close to the lane as she could, leaning as much over as she could and reaching even further out. She sent the last ball down the lane with gusto, and it jumped the bump, reaching all the way to the top hole. And falling in! 100 points! A loud bell rang out from within the machine, and it lit up in a wild flashing display. Oh, how exciting! Her owner doubled their previous attempts to show excitement and added a small kick to the air. Nice! They turned to her and raised a flat hand. She gave them a big smile and a single accepting nod in response. Her owner's smile didn't waver, but their eyes lowered just a bit. You don't know about, Here, put your hand up like mine. She did, and her owner clapped their hand against hers. A high five, when something really good happens. She had seen this jester perform before in passing a few times, but it was more strange behavior she hadn't anticipated needing to know. She made a mental note not to miss a chance at having her hand touch theirs in the future. Want to try again? Now that you got the hang of it, you can definitely beat that score. She gave a big nod, ready to sink every 100-point shot and receive high fives throughout. Her owner put in another round of quarters and the balls rolled into place. She greedily pulled the first out and went to lean in as far as she could for another easy shot, but her owner reached out and pulled her back. It's unfair if you do that every time. Try shooting from back here. There's meant to be a bit of practice involved. They planted her firmly in her initial position, just back from the edge of the machine. Something else strange, a self-imposed rule to make it harder to achieve your goal. Well, it doesn't matter. She can still get every 100-point shot. She took steady aim and sent the ball rolling. Right into the bottom slot for 10 points. What? But she put the right... whatever. She grabbed another and tried again. It bounced off the 50-point hole to join its first companion. 10 points. Now really, what is this? She just got 100 points not 3 shots ago. She grabbed another and threw it, missing the 100 but landing in the 50. She spun around and held her hand up to her owner, happily anticipating her reward. They laughed and gave her another high five, her hand sticking to theirs for just a bit longer than would be normal. This continued for the rest of the game. Miss a few, sink one, receive praise. It was so enjoyable. She completely understood why humans did this now. If only she could figure out why the ball wasn't going into the 100 hole every time. At the end of that game, her score was better. Marginally. But an improvement nonetheless. She looked expectantly at her owner, ready for round 3 and more high fives, but they stepped over and began to usher her away from the machine. There's a whole lot of other things to try here. We can always come back to this one. Let's see what else you might like, okay? She nodded her head in agreement and grabbed their hand as before, holding it tightly and leading them around the pier to find another interesting scene for her to participate in. And there were many. Test your strength, ring toss, free throw, bottle knockdown. So many choices, she was feeling a bit overwhelmed. But there, in the distance, a game just for her. Whack-a-bot. She tugged her owner along through the crowd, bumping and pushing past people and the occasional robot, and still no one cared. She had been instructed on so much that wasn't true. How people wouldn't like a robot expressing her opinion, or wearing her own clothes, or making a bad impression by not being attentive to her owner at all times. But her owner was so different, and no one cared. She felt so free. They pulled away from the crowd and grabbed a free machine, her owner feeding it quarters to entice it to life. She picked up a large mallet that sat nearby, attached by a cable to the machine. Ooh, Whack-a-Bot, a classic. Just whack the robot when he pops up. Just what? She opened her mouth to ask, but with the final quarter inserted, an army of small toy robots, not too dissimilar looking from Rip, popped up in unison before sinking back underneath the top of the game. After a second, one popped up in the back, awaiting his fate. But she didn't raise her mallet or make any attempt to play, the name and purpose of the game dawning on her. What a horrible game. Who would ever enjoy such a horrible thing, robots being hurt? As the toy robots popped up and descended without play, her owner caught on. They reached over cautiously and took the mallet, setting it down on the machine and grabbing her by the shoulder, leading her away. Her eyes stayed on the machine until they were several feet away. It's just a game, there's nothing meant by it, her owner mumbled to her as they pushed back into the crowd, her being led this time. Her thoughts stayed with the machine as her owner took her across the venue to the game titled Ring Toss. In a small square booth sat a triangle of bottles, the back wall adorned with all sizes of random stuffed animals, and at the side of it all, a red and white pinstripe-suited robot holding a set of rings. Her owner traded some cash for 10 rings and handed them to the Nandroid. Real simple and straightforward, this one. Just toss the ring and get it around the bottle. She was eager to get her mind off of the previous game and made a few tosses, with the ring clanging against the bottles but never looping around the tops. As her rings dwindled, she finally got one around a bottle in the middle. Her mood lightened as the spark of excitement flared up in her again, mixed with the eagerness to see her owner so ecstatic over something she did. In the end, out of the 10 rings, only 2 found their way over a bottle, but a quick exchange with the carnival bot put 10 more rings in her hand. This one was much more difficult compared to skee ball. The rings just would not stay where she tossed them, always bouncing up and off of the bottle tops, and by the end, the same outcome, 2 out of 10. Her owner indicated to the carnival bot that was all, and he tapped a row of some smaller toys. "That's your prize, pick one out," her owner instructed. She looked across them all, a dog, a cat, an alligator, a green alien, and zeroed in on a plush bouquet of roses. She pointed it out, and the robot grabbed it from the back and handed it over to her owner, who presented it to her. She took a moment to savor this feeling. She slowly reached out and took it from them, hugging it to her chest. She couldn't put it into thought exactly what was going on inside, but more and more it was just these unique feelings, and less it was errors. More people moved in to try their luck at ring toss, and her owner walked back into the flow of other patrons, ready to try more games. As they dodged through the crowd, her owner pulled her along to a string of food vendors selling some of the most unhealthy options she had ever seen. They freed themselves from the flow of people and went up to an opened window of the nearest stall, steam wafting from the small open windows. A man in a t-shirt similar in design to the one the robots had been wearing, but much more faded and with less care on upkeep, leaned out of the window and took her owner's order. He dove back into the swirling mists and appeared moments later with, oh no, a deep-fried hot dog on a stick and deep-fried batter coated with powdered sugar. This was most certainly not a responsible food choice. Her owner gave her an eager smile and nodded to some tables near the edge of the pier. She reluctantly followed as they made their way for a free seat, scaring off a few seagulls from under the table. She sat down as they tore open a condiment wrapper and began to drench the corn dog in ketchup. Her owner caught sight of her questionable gaze. "Oh, come on now, it's just for tonight. If you could taste it, you would love funnel cakes, I promise." Her owner began to devour the greasy treats, and she could only watch in abject horror. She made a mental note to herself that this week was going to be salads and low-carb foods for dinner. But her dour mood broke quickly. Each bite they took would leave a trail of sugar around their lips, which they would hastily wipe away and repeat the unending process. Watching them act in such a manner made her laugh. Her owner stopped mid-bite and gently set their food down before taking a more refined stance and eating at a slower pace. They were sure not to make eye contact with her, pretending instead that they had full self-control the entire time. Her laughter continued, free and clear. It was so enjoyable to be here with them and see them doing these things. Why not enjoy it then? As the thought mulled in her mind, she looked back towards the crowd of people in the middle of the pier. Most were wandering around, ebbing and flowing towards unknown destinations, but some were waiting in line for various games or food, or getting pictures taken with their friends, or staring directly at her. Her attention snapped over to the face looking at her, a copy of her own. It was another Nandroid, standing a bit off from the crowd with a small child in tow, staring her down with a harsh, judgmental look. Old teaching kicked in hard, and she immediately went rigid, assuming her sterling stance and cupping her hands in her lap. Head held high, salvaging what dignity she could from the situation. All her happy thoughts and feelings came crashing down around her, and a little voice from within spoke up. What was she doing? Dressed like this? Out here like this? Spending time with her owner in such a fashion? But just as quickly as it had come, another voice fought back. She was here having fun with her owner, so what if people saw her enjoying herself? She was here with her owner and she deserved this. Who cared about her acting normally? Not anyone she had been seen by today, and certainly not anyone here except for this one uptight Nandroid. She shouldn't have to act different just because someone that might judge her differently was watching. All that mattered was that she was having fun with the most special person she had ever met. This monumental mind change felt like a wave, crashing against the beach below. She was treated special because she was special, and there wasn't any use in hiding it. She turned to look the other Nandroid square in the eyes, and still she stood there, appalled at the sight laid before her. A Nandroid dressed in a unique outfit, acting so nonchalantly, wearing her feelings on her sleeves. This was it. Time to face the ridicule head on. The two Nandroids battled through their eyes, one being the absolute definition of sterling perfection, the other an unruly possible outmode. As she looked at what she had just been not 48 hours before, she did the only thing she could think of to show the other Nandroid she didn't care about how she looked to others anymore. She raised her hand, thinking about the gifts her owner had bought for her today, gave her a large smile, and waved. The other Nandroid looked utterly disgusted, but her young charge saw the exchange and waved back happily. The other Nandroid huffed and pulled them both into the crowd, hoping to lose sight of this breach of etiquette which laid before her. The winner's hand remained up for a few seconds, frozen in thought. Nothing was different. The world was the same. No one was going to punish her or think badly on Sterling or question her owner's sanity. And yet everything was different. She felt like she was making the final leaps into something unknown. Her owner finished eating and leaned back in their chair, sighing. Fat and happy with the intake of sugar they had received, they'd need several minutes before they could be convinced to move. They wiped their hands on a napkin and leaned back in their chair, closing their eyes. So what do you think so far? Having fun? They already knew the answer. She knew that they knew they already knew the answer, but it was enjoyable to talk about. Today had been another roller coaster for her. Yes, I didn't know there were so many things I could do out here. I always thought I was happiest being a good robot. Doing this kind of stuff doesn't make you a bad robot. It's okay for you to want to do fun and interesting things in life outside of just taking care of the house. They kept their eyes closed, head cast to the sky. Like how her owner had never questioned her lack of outfits, she had never questioned her role in life. And both just needed a small nudge to see the obvious. I suppose not. I just hadn't ever thought about this kind of thing before. Well, from now on you should. It's your life. You should be interested in yourself and things you like, not just me all the time. She involuntarily jerked at this statement. Was she reading too deep into it, or were they trying to allude that they knew something about her recent thoughts? How embarrassing. She was glad they continued to rest and couldn't see her cheeks, which gave a soft pink glow to the dim table. I'll try, she mumbled. They gave a short laugh and stretched in their chair. Her owner opened their eyes and began to retrieve their trash, before looking off to the side of the pier where the scattered seagulls sat, patiently waiting for their turn at the feast left beneath the table. An idea popped into her owner's head, and a sly smile found its way to their face. Can you hold your hand out for me? They asked innocently. A strange request, but there was so little she would ever want to deny them now, so she did. They picked up some remnants of funnel cake and dropped them onto her open palm. How peculiar. Stretch your arm out that way? They indicated the edge of the pier. What reasoning would there be for this, she thought to herself as she stretched her arm away from the table towards the edge of the pier. A seagull had taken flight from the edge of the pier and snatched the crumbs from her hand before flapping away. The calm birds were gone, replaced by a frenzy of flying demons, all waiting for their turn at a freely given morsel. And more now attracted from further away at the sounds and screeches their brethren made. She pulled her hand away and cowered back from the attack. Her owner found this exceedingly funny and began to laugh. That was quite uncalled for, she snapped at them. But their laugh quickly melted her mechanical heart, though she still tried to maintain her haughty, angry look. She wasn't sure it was convincing, though. They flung the rest of the food onto the boardwalk, and a dozen or so seagulls dove upon the fresh meal. I'm sorry, you're right. I should have given you a little warning, they hissed through bouts of laughter. They rubbed their eyes and stood, pleased with their cheeky joke. She picked up her prize and tried to fight back the smile that was intruding onto her face. She liked this side of them, being so free and playful. Let's hit some more games, then maybe some rides? Not sure if you'll like any of those, but a few wouldn't hurt. She threw their trash away and she bolted herself onto their side again, ready to be held and guided. The errors that used to parade in her mind were now dwindling, as the more interactions the two had, the easier it seemed to be for her to handle herself, and enjoy what was happening. She liked them being close. She liked them doing things for her. She liked sharing experiences with them. Whatever was wrong with her before was being fixed. Or just as easily, she was someone different now from just a day's worth of unique adventures with them. Either way, she was quite happy with how her first day off had turned out, and the promise of more to come only sweetened these new feelings she had gained. Her absent-minded thinking of the day's events had made her blind to their next target. Balloon blast! A row of water guns pointed at robot heads with a big smiling mouth greeted her attention. This stall was also manned by a human. He began waving people towards him, shouting about the final call for the next round. Her owner gave the man a wave and handed over some money, and he motioned the only empty gun left, the others being taken by groups of people. As they both walked up to the gun, the attendant gave a short yell, and he was shaking his head, but before he could explain, her owner quickly jogged back over to him. A hushed discussion and another slew of bills, and the man nodded his head in agreement, though he gave her owner a weird stare. Her owner came waltzing back over wearing a strained smile. Had to pay extra for myself. They ushered her up to the water gun and stood directly behind, wrapping their arms around her and grabbing the gun. Oh dear, maybe the errors hadn't completely subsided. She placed her prize on the table in front of them and reached out to grab the gun herself. It's easy. Just shoot the water into the bot's mouth, pop the balloon first, and we win. That little spark she felt playing the earlier games returned. She was excited to play and hopefully to win. A loud buzzer sounded and the guns pressurized. They had quick aim and were a true shot, filling their balloon quickly. Her excitement built as they pulled into the lead, but the gun gave a quick shake and they were off target. She tried to correct, but found resistance. What was going on? The gun flipped to the side, still off target, and again she strained to move it back with little success. She put her body into it, and the gun moved back to shooting straight. As she loosened her grip to adjust her angle, the gun moved again, and this time the reason was revealed. Her owner was the one turning the gun! She looked up and scoffed. What were they doing? They were biting their lip, looking pensive at having been found out. They dared eye contact with her. Come on, it's never going to get filled at this rate. She was astounded at their audacity. She grabbed the gun and tried wresting it from their grip. She wasn't going to lose on their account. They began laughing and swinging the gun left and right while she valiantly tried to fight them off, but it was no use. She had to improvise. A quick but soft elbow into their stomach made them wince and release the gun. Oh, right in the funnel cake! She laughed and grabbed the free gun, now able to reattain her target. Her owner tried fighting one-armed, but now she had the upper hand. They began to reach back in for a better grip, and she pushed them back with her body, keeping them at bay as they neared the end of the game. This was fun like she had never imagined, playfully wrestling with her owner over a water gun. They both laughed as each new attempt was thwarted, and she tried her best to keep them from interfering, them doing their best to tease her. Down a few guns, she heard a squeal and stole a quick glance. 2 humans were playing the game as well, in much the same way as her and her owner. What a nice sight. As she wondered if this was how she and her owner appeared to others, one of the people leaned in close to the other and stole a quick kiss, eliciting another squeal. Her attention to the outside world waned. The metaphorical gears started turning. Bit by bit, the puzzle pieces of today fell into place. The longer she stared, the easier it was to see the writing on the wall. She looked up and down both sides of the game. The groups of people were all standing in the same position as her now, with the same sort of shenanigans happening to each, and each was very intimate. These weren't groups. They were couples. Human couples. Human couples on dates. Human couples on dates in love. No. She snapped forward and felt herself shrink, like a black hole had opened within and threatened to pull her thoughts and feelings into it. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. She couldn't. They weren't her, but they both. Oh no. This was not allowed. All the events and situations and feelings she had encountered over the last day suddenly made sense, and it numbed her emotions. Humans and robots were not allowed to be doing this kind of thing, and she absolutely, positively, 100% was not allowed to have these kinds of emotions. This was bad. Worse than bad. This was wrong. How did this happen? She was no longer paying attention to the game, which had just ended as one of the other couples burst their balloon first. Her owner laughed and gave her a soft tug from the gun, keeping one arm wrapped around her. Ah, dang. Can't believe the gun would malfunction like that. Who would have thought that was going to happen? They prodded her, but she didn't respond. She was suddenly very self-conscious about the way she looked with her owner, and her clothes, and how she had acted all day. She stopped as they began to wheel her around to the crowd for another trip into the fray. She put on her best sterling smile and looked at them, trying her best to hide her fear. She now officially hated these lies she was telling, but she needed a reason for them to leave. My battery is getting low. I would like to head home soon. She gave the delivery as normally as she could, which seemed convincing enough. Oh yeah, sorry. I didn't really know how long you can go for. Should have said something earlier. You want to head back now? I'm pretty beat from being on my feet all day too. She nodded and began walking back to the car, tugging her owner behind. They had to get away fast. They exited from the pier and went down to the parking lot, the bright neon lights giving way to dim buzzing bulbs on street lamps, the loud sounds of the pier deadening to nearby traffic. She didn't say anything, keeping herself closed tight and moving with determination. The less she thought about this right now, the better. They made it to the car, and her owner began walking around to her side, again to help her in. At this point, she pulled away from their grasp. That's okay, I can let myself in this time. She flashed a quick false smile and stood at the car door, bending down slightly to hide her face. Her owner unlocked the car and they both climbed in. Her owner started the car and looked to her with more concern. Do we need to go somewhere else for you to charge first? How long do you have left? Oh, they were so thoughtful and caring about her. That has to be why she loves... No, she has to stop these thoughts. This wasn't right and it shouldn't be happening. She took a moment to compose herself. We don't need to stop anywhere for me. I have enough charge to make it home. She leaned back into her seat and kept her small plush bouquet on her lap instead of sending it into the back with her other belongings. Her owner nodded and turned on the radio, content to relax on the way home instead of filling the silence with more conversation, which was just fine with her. She didn't want to think too much about this new pressing life issue or attempt to make small talk when she felt like she had just committed a terrible crime. While it was getting late in the day, it wasn't late for Makina Beach and traffic was still around, but lessened. The local radio station played smooth songs for the journey home. Her owner kept to themselves, obviously worn out from the day's events and ready for a nice hot shower and soft warm bed. She tried her best to practice her sterling training and keep her head empty of thought, but for a different reason than she was originally taught. What had started as errors and trouble operating was now morphing into a much deeper fear. Robots that broke rules were outmodes, and outmodes that broke big rules were dismantled, and she was breaking a very serious rule. She wasn't meant to feel this way. She wasn't meant to be acting like this. She wasn't meant to be anything more than a maid. What if one of those people had seen her today and figured out what was happening to her before she even knew? What if the other Nandroid on the pier raised a concern with Sterling? She couldn't imagine being taken away at this point, not after everything that had happened. She couldn't go back to being a good robot. She had felt so different, so alive today. And just the thought of being removed from her owner made her metal chassis shiver. And at odds to all this, she remembered each and every little detail of affection from today. How they held her, how they helped her through the sand, getting to hold their hand, being so close for so long, seeing such amazing sights and enjoying it all with them. All these thoughts swirled and meshed in her mechanical mind. This was much worse than a potential error that could get fixed at Sterling or worked around with upgraded components. There was no path forward here. No one could help her with this. Well, someone could, the little voice within piped up. All she needed to do was tell her owner. She shoved her face into her prize bouquet, trying to squash the thoughts from her mind. There's no way this was possibly going to end well for her. Whatever was going to happen, she couldn't be prepared for it. Everything fine over there? Her owner's soft question startled her, but she kept the plush toy to her face. She didn't want to lie again, but she couldn't ever tell them about this. She felt like she was at a standstill, being pulled in two competing directions with neither side gaining an inch. Speak her mind and be a bad robot? Lie and be a bad robot? She just couldn't bring herself to speak. More robot trouble? She nodded her head in agreement without speaking or looking away, face still lost in her toy. Did you want me to schedule that Sterling appointment tomorrow morning? She shook her head vigorously. Sterling couldn't help her now. Did you want to talk about it? She didn't move. She didn't know how to respond. Again, any response she gave just put her deeper into trouble. They didn't press further, and the last short stretch of the ride home was only broken by the low radio. She felt the familiar sway of the car passing through their neighborhood, and felt the slow turn onto the gravel driveway leading them finally home. As the car came to a slow stop, her owner opened up again. I do hope if this is something that really bothers you, you'll tell me, or tell me who you want to go see to talk to if I can't help. I don't like feeling like there's something wrong with you and I can't help. She hugged the plush even tighter, risking splitting the stitching. How truly wonderful they were. They reached over and touched her shoulder. I think you handled today just fine, and we had a lot of fun, didn't we? She could be honest here, and mumbled a muffled agreement. We'll do it again next weekend for sure, okay? She nodded happily at this thought. With that, they let themselves out of the car. She reached into the back seat and collected her other items from the day, holding everything close, and exited the car as well. She followed her owner up to the front door, which they had already opened and left ajar for her. She came inside and closed the door behind her, finding them already stretching and yawning, shoes flung off. They gave her a side glance as they reached their arms into the sky. I'm beat. Gonna get a shower and hit the hay. I've got to run into the office for a bit tomorrow morning, so don't worry about breakfast, and remember what I asked? Lay off the chores a bit, and don't start dinner at noon, please. She gave a decisive bow, and her owner began walking to their room, calling up into the air behind them. Sweet dreams! She heard their bedroom door open and close, and only now dared to show her face to the world. The silent and familiar home was calming to her inner struggle, helping her relax. But it didn't solve her problems. As she slowly made her way to her room, the small voice popped up again. You can be a good robot and love a human. She shook her head at the thought. Of course she couldn't. She couldn't feel this way about a human, and they couldn't feel this way about her. Did they feel this way about her? This thought caught her off guard as she closed the door to her room. She wasn't treated how a robot was supposed to be. She was treated special by them, and today had proved it. But there was no way that they could feel that way. Right? She remembered all the things they had done today, and remembered how they had acted at the balloon blast, just like all those other human couples had. She shook her head harder, trying in vain to toss the thoughts out. There was no point in entertaining this idea right now, no matter how happy the thought of it made her. She took off her new clothes and laid them neatly on her small desk. They would have to be washed with the rest of the laundry before she could wear them again. She changed into her tried-and-true Sterling uniform, giving herself a look in the mirror. How much difference one day can make. What had once been made for her now looked unfitting. She laid down on her chair and plugged in. She thought of what she might possibly see tonight, deciding that even if it was just a normal backup, it would still be wonderful to relive any of the moments she had today. With just a few seconds before her recharge cycle would begin, she ruminated one last time on the day's events and her place in this world. She was special.